Alright, well, I've been meaning to do this single review forever, but honestly I've had a really hard time thinking about what to say about a game without it dragging on and on and on. In hindsight, that's kinda how I felt about Lufia. It drags on and on and on. First, we'll start with a little backstory here. I'm a huge fan of the RPG genre. One of the first Super Nintendo games I ever owned was actually Earthbound. For anyone somehow unfamiliar with Earthbound, it's a title that many consider a grindfest, but I fell in love with it at the age of 8. From there I got into other titles like Chrono Trigger, Mario RPG, and then later on the PlayStation era of RPGs. It's always been my favorite genre. Lufia was always a game I had my eye on, but it took until my teenage years to finally obtain, and even longer to finally sit down and play. I mean, it's from Taito, a game company known for a ton of great games on the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, so it's gotta be good, right? And here we go. There will be spoilers, so be warned if you think about playing this game pretty soon. So the story of this game is very simple. There's a group of evildoers called the Sinistrals, and I might get that name wrong, but that's just what I'm gonna call it. Who are out to destroy the world or whatever, and a group of 4 heroes showed up and saved the day. You do have to play through the prologue, and I wish it was just a long cutscene instead. Who wants to go through random battles in a prologue after all? So you have to battle all the Sinistrals one by one, and after the final battle, 2 of our heroes, Maxim and his wife Celine, are stranded on the top of the Fortress of Doom while it collapses, presumably killing them both. Roughly 100 years later starts the real story of Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. Our new protagonist is Ass, a descendant of the hero Maxim. He's a skilled soldier and childhood friends with Lufia. Ass is a pretty strong character and learns a variety of assistance and healing magic throughout the game. Lufia is a snappy, hot-headed girl and honestly sort of unlikable for the entirety of the game, at least in my opinion. She has weak basic attacks, but has strong magic spells. Soon after meeting our new heroes, the world suddenly turns to shit. Monsters appear and the ancient Sinistrals return. It's not really explained how, but it doesn't really matter. Pretty quickly, the rest of your party fills out. Aguro, the leader of the army, joins first. He can't use any spells, but he's the strongest character throughout most of the game. Jiren, the elf, joins soon after. She fights Lufia for the affection of Ass for most of the journey. Jiren uses mostly damage spells, but also has a variety of healing spells as well. Jiren also has access to use a bow, which can hit more than one enemy on the screen. From there, it's pretty much 20 hours of filler. You'll find yourself going from one town to next, and each town has a sort of problem that you must solve before moving on, but none of it really advances the story in any meaningful way. It's kind of like you just run into a town and there's a dude that says, "Hey, I'll help you, but you gotta find a missing kid or a missing flower or a missing whatever, and I'll help you out." It's really basic fetch quest type stuff. The game itself is very traditional. The battles are random and they happen way too often. I'm not one to shy away from a good RPG grind, but goddamn, I'm not sure I was prepared for this. You'll be lucky if you're able to move for more than 5 seconds in the overworld map before it thrusts you into another battle. There are items that you can use that theoretically lessen the amount of battles, but I was going through them all game long and it didn't seem that helpful at all. Might be a developer's joke of a placebo. The battles are very straightforward. You pick an attack, pick a monster, and it runs through the motions. Otherwise, most of your characters learn the same healing spells, and they don't take a lot of magic points to use. You'll never really need to invest in healing items after the mid-game. I'm not really a fan of this style, as it doesn't feel like it makes any of your party members feel unique, and most of the items are useless because they learn so many skills. Another thing I feel like I need to discuss is the amount of chests you find throughout the game. It's almost a side quest in itself. They're absolutely everywhere, and every single dungeon has multiple branching paths to find them. There's even a chest counter that tells you how many you miss at the end of the game. It's kind of fun at first, but in reality it just prolongs the game. At least you can find some pretty good weapons and armor if you're lucky. The weapon and armor systems are pretty straightforward. There is, however, one weird thing about a small subset of weapons here. You can find cursed weapons throughout the game. When you equip them, they can't be taken off unless you pay a fee at the church. But unfortunately, all of the cursed weapons that I'm aware of are pretty terrible and I wouldn't recommend using them. There is, however, one reason you'd want to find every chest you can, and that's to find all 8 of the dragon eggs in the game. If you can find them all, there's a wish dragon near the end of the game that you can trade them in for a powerful item. Sound familiar? I would recommend looking up a guide for the locations before getting started, as it's going to save you a ton of time hunting them down. And there is a cool dungeon that's available pretty early in the game. At certain character levels, the dungeon will open up a new floor that has stronger monsters. The chests in these floors contain some powerful weapon and armor, so it's worth digging in. Typically, most RPGs are about getting to the next boss fight, but Lufia plays much more like a puzzle RPG. Staying alive and finding chests is the real goal of the game. There aren't even that many boss fights, or at least any memorable ones. Most are pretty bland, nameless monsters that are just guarding the end of a tower or a cavern. And then towards the end of Lufia, the Fortress of Doom is revived and it's almost time to fight the Sinistrals. But first you can explore the map in your brand new helicopter. Before this point, there are warps you can use and a boat, but some areas were off limits until now. The thing that sucks most about this is that there's no map within the game and the world is a lot larger than you'd think. There are like a million towers and it's impossible to figure out where you need to go. Eventually, after beating a few final quests, you can go to the Fortress of Doom and fight the Sinistrals again. The Fortress of Doom is understandably the hardest area in the game, but at this point every character in your team is a healing god, so it's not all that bad. And when you finally get to the top, it's like reliving the prologue all over again. There isn't much of a difference in these fights, but something seems off. In the prologue, there were 4 Sinistrals, but here there are only 3. Oh my god! So Lufia was a hidden Sinistral the entire time. During the original fight in the prologue, she somehow survived and got amnesia. I'm not sure how she survived for the 100 years after as a young woman, but we don't really need to fret the minor details. One by one, you'll fight the Sinistrals, and you'll need to be careful and patient, constantly casting buffs and healing your team while your tanks dish out the damage. After beating the first 3, they try to merge with Lufia to create one powerful being, but thanks to some handy sword hacks, Ass is able to save her right before that happens. The end boss of Lufia isn't that bad at all. Same thing here as before, Lufia and Jiren are left buffing and healing and using items when needed. It's tedious but completely doable without much trouble. And after the final battle, Lufia tells our heroes that she has to die in order for the Sinistrals to be gone for good. But again, sword hacks happens and the day is saved. Except for the part about Lufia falling to her death. I gotta say, I really enjoyed the end credits. Ass travels the world looking for any signs of Lufia, hoping that she isn't dead. Aguro and Jiren return to their normal lives, and they bury a good friend you'll meet throughout the journey. Eventually, Ass returns home and finally finds what he's been searching so long for. The ending actually put a tear to my eye and made up for the mediocrity of Lufia leading up to it. As for the rest of the game that I didn't really talk about, there's not much else to say. I guess the music is really good. The YouTube channel GameStack uses the town music in a ton of their videos if you want to check them out for some other good game relating content. The graphics are fine, I mean nothing will blow you away, but at least it's a very colorful and bright game. And at the very end, it gives you game stats and they're a complete mindfuck. My realistic playtime was probably around 20 hours. Several times I left the game running while I went and did other things around the house. If you take that into consideration, I had about 1,263 random battles during 20 hours of gameplay. Now, my math isn't the greatest, but that's a little more than 1 battle per minute. Each battle takes anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds to complete on average, so that's just pure insanity. I somehow also missed about 70 chests, and honestly I have no idea where those would have been, because I checked every chest I could possibly find. So in closing, here are my final thoughts about Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. It's a good to mediocre RPG, on a system that's known for having the greatest RPGs of all time. There is nothing that really makes it stand out from the rest of them. The random battles happen far too often, and grinding for levels is actually very difficult and it takes forever. Some of the mechanics, such as cursed weapons or the consumable items, falls off the wayside relatively quick and becomes an afterthought. There also aren't any secret dungeons or additional endgame content as far as I know. For Taito, a developer not known for its RPGs, it's at least an honest effort and definitely not terrible by any means. If it wasn't so damn charming, I'd actually give it a lower score, but for now, I'm going to settle with a 3 out of 5. I'm glad I finally played it, but truthfully, I don't think I'll ever be picking it up again. I have heard that the sequel, or maybe prequel, Lufia 2, The Rise of the Sinistrals, is a lot better, so I'll definitely give that a try in the future.